Hey, everybody, John Newman here, and welcome to episode number 14 of Welcome to the Machine. And this evening's guest is a 29-year-old from Chicago, right, Case?
Yes, sir. Chicago.
And Case is the founder and editor-in-chief of Pursuit. He also is the co-founder of Trep Media Group. He's been in digital marketing, digital media for quite a while. In Case, I read an article in Entrepreneur Magazine, and I believe the title was How One Man Grew a Social Media Brand to Reach Millions.
It's the one. I remember that one. That was recently. It was like 2 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just talk to me about that? I mean, clearly you've been in this long enough. If you grew your social media brand to millions, just give us a little bit about your background and how it led to that article.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, we could go in on that as far as you'd like, but I mean, so that article was like 2 months ago in Entrepreneur Magazine, but I've been doing, digital marketing growth and Pursuit specifically for about three and a half years. So it certainly isn't an overnight thing. It certainly wasn't something I started the other month and then got that feature. So I've been doing it for quite some time, and I'm happy to, go in on the story of Pursuit and everything. But basically that article was kind of just a reflection on the various social following that I've been able to build across Pursuit. So that's email, that's Instagram, that's Facebook. And that's, a couple other avenues that are part of my larger company. But yeah, that was a good article. Press is always great, but it's definitely more to it. Yeah, there it is. For 3 years. So it says it right there. Yeah. So I think actually that's a really good.
And that's what I love. I think that right beneath how one man grew a social media brand to reach millions, the line beneath that, scroll up, Jeff. He posted every day for 3 years, and now he's seeing the results.
Right.
And I think that's the story that, it didn't happen overnight. You didn't put out a piece of content and all of a sudden you got millions of viewers. I mean, you grinded. I mean,
no. Yeah, it certainly didn't. I mean, I've been, creating and sharing and distributing content for 3 years. I mean, it's become part of my lifestyle. I'll come home and I've been doing that every single night for, over 1,000 days. So certainly is part of my ritual and routine. And I think 3 years is a long time to get to this point. And I think that's largely due to, the learning curve that it takes to start creating an audience. But, it's been 3 years where I've learned a lot. So yeah, it's a good article. Glad you shared that.
How did you get, walk us back, kind of through your, was it, where did you come up with the idea? How did you get started in digital media? Where did all of this come from?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I moved to Chicago when I graduated from school, went to Notre Dame, moved to Chicago, started working at an ad agency here in Chicago, doing media buying, media planning, analytics, that kind of thing. Did that for about a year and a half, and then jumped to go to another agency to do similar strategy for different brands, large brands, think like the P&Gs, the Allstates, the Nordstrom, like those large Fortune 500 companies. And, along the way, it was my role as a young millennial media strategist to help these brands connect with millennials, kind of a role that made sense. And, the accompanying duties of that was to work with the millennial publication. So to work with brands that whose mission statement was to create content that resonated with millennials. And, I worked with, the BuzzFeeds, the Elite Dailies, the HuffPos, like things like that. And really, I would look at myself and say, really, is this really the type of content that would resonate with me? I'm supposedly the target audience for these brands. And the answer was a glaring no. The answer was also a glaring no for my friends, my peers, my fellow graduates, I suppose. And it became kind of clear that, it really wasn't something that resonated. And I've always been a voracious reader and writer pretty much all my life. So I was like, as a hobby, I'll start, create my own kind of database of content that I thought actually resonated. So I created Pursuit with the PRSUIT spelling, just as a blog to start curating content that I thought better resonated. And the whole concept around resonance for my audience was this idea of experience-driven content. I can go off on this, I can get passionate about it, but like the gist is the fact that if I'm reading content that's a list of things that you need to do in your life, you better have experience or something that happened in your life that gave you that gives merit to your words. Just a list of 10 things that you need to do to get promoted at work, and you throw that up on HuffPo and you call it substantive content. I think that's really, really wrong. You need to have experiences that back it. So really, I started just basically curating content from bloggers that maybe not a lot of people knew about, or people on Medium or people on LinkedIn that were actually putting their experiences behind the content that they were creating. And I just started to throw it up on Pursuit. After about a year of doing that and kind of pioneering this experience-driven content, started to get a lot of traction with it and started to get more original content. So, early on, I reached out to basically everyone that I respected who was a blogger that was writing in this style, and was fortunate to make a lot of connections that way. And those connections turned into original content. And then fast forward a year later, I founded an entirely separate company that now owns Pursuit. I have 3 business partners, quite a bit of press, a lot more experience under my belt. At that time I wasn't a digital marketer. I didn't know anything about digital. I didn't know anything about doing all that jazz. But I think the fact that I was working during the day at these ad agencies, doing digital strategy, and then coming home and create this content platform, it really helped. That's the long and short of it. I think the vision has scaled a lot more from the blog concept, but that's the meat and potatoes of it.
So if I'm going to try and summarize, and once again, I'm 45, but I'm very passionate about mentoring, helping millennials, and trying to understand that space. Because as a business person, I'm aware enough to know that I need to understand that space, or just from a straight business standpoint. And what you said was that you thought that there was basically a void of the type of content that you believe that millennials or Gen Z wanted to see. Can you just dive a little bit deeper on that experiential?
Yeah, for sure. And I think I looked at it through the lens of Gen Y, Gen Z, but that is such a term nowadays. Everyone calls himself a Gen Z consultant or a millennial consultant. And I can go off on that if you'd like, because I think that is just the biggest buzzword of the century. But so I was looking at it through the lens of being a millennial, because that's what other perspective would I have, right? I'm a millennial. Here's how I view things. And I think millennials, call it a generalization, but I think we're a little bit more skeptical nowadays with growing up in the internet. We have access to facts and opinions and information much quicker, so we can fact check things. We have a bullshit meter that I think is much more prevalent than previous generations. So I think for us, when I read an article that someone writes that is telling me to do something or that is offering me advice, I'm like, that's great. I would love to hear your advice. Let me read your advice. And then it's just a list of things that this person thinks you should do. I'm a little skeptical because I don't know where that information came from. Are you just lifting it? It sounds good. It sounds good in theory, but have you actually one, applied it to your life, or two, even if you haven't applied it, what was the experience in your life that drove you to that conclusion? What happened in your life that caused you to think that this is what you should do to get a promotion? Or an article that is why you should be single in your 20s. Cool. Now tell me about you. I'm hoping you're at least in your mid to late 20s. What was the experience that drove you to that conclusion? Or an article that's why you should travel the world. Okay, I'm assuming you traveled the world and that you're not telling me your experiences, right? So, it was just a need for people to back up what they're writing about. There's no revolution or anything. It's just give me some transparency, give me some context into what you're saying, and that will make me a happy guy. And I don't think that's necessarily even the generational thing. I think you would agree, as an intelligent and observation-driven person, that you are much more likely to be moved and inspired by someone who gives you background into their life rather than just giving you a list of things, right? So it's a small little tweak, but it was, I didn't see a content platform that did it consistently. Like I would see on HuffPo a good piece that did it, on Elite Daily a piece that did it, but I didn't see a platform that really rallied around that idea. So that's how I started. It's since scaled beyond that into keeping that as core as a foundation, but more broad in application. So yeah, so I call it experience-driven content, but I think it's just logical. You want insight, and I think I crave it, and I think my fellow humans crave it as well.
Hey, let me just you said something that was kind of interesting, and it resonated with me because what I hear you saying is that you have the millennials have a very, very accurate bullshit meter, for lack of a better word. But at the same time, I see, and I'm a huge fan of Gary Vee. There's a lot of bullshit out there right now, and people are actually buying that bullshit. So
yes.
It's like if I wanted to launch an ebook course, I believe that with the right marketing, with the right exposure, I don't have to be knowledgeable on something to sell bullshit. And I see a lot of that. And I'm passionate about the same thing you are. I want transparency. I want accountability.
Yep.
And when I grew up, you actually had to be somewhat, and maybe you didn't, but at least this is how I remember growing up. You actually had to be relevant before people bought your shit. Now I see 20-year-olds that are launching courses on how to do blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
And they don't know shit.
Yeah. Welcome to my world. Yeah. I don't have an answer for you. I think it's an interesting dichotomy. I think we're skeptical, but I think that doesn't lead us a whole lot of places. I mean, yeah, I think, you look at people, and I'm not faulting or hating on anyone. I think different strokes for different folks. You can leverage your influence however you like, but you see people who self-publish a book on Amazon, and then the next day they're a self-proclaimed best-selling author, or someone starts a blog, and then the next day they're a top-ranked publisher. Like, it's all arbitrary. Like, who's actually writing this? What are the sources? Like, no one really cares anymore, it seems, and I'm not quite sure why. I think obviously the proliferation of social media and like the lack of checks and balances therein has led to that. So I think we're on the same page. There's a lot of guruship, and Gary speaks to it very well. Gary's actually a contributor on Pursuit, and I talked to him and his BD people because we really connect on this idea. But I think there's not a good answer, but I think if you dig deep enough, the bullshit rises to the surface. I mean, you look at people. I had a call the other week with someone who was a young college graduate, like 22, go-getter, hustler, really respected their drive, but they wanted to start a consulting agency. I don't understand that, because the definition of consulting is you have experience that you're leveraging, like vast experience that you're leveraging from their help clients. It just didn't make sense. And like people who, and again, I'm not hating on people who are like Gen Z consultants or Gen Y consultants, but just because you are part of a group doesn't mean you consult about them. It just means you're therein, right? You need experience. So experience is the trump card for everything, right? In politics, that could get polarizing, but generally you need experience. You need experience in a certain extent to do anything. But it's tough. It's tough to make that transparent in the day and age where clickbait headlines will win out every time on long form content where someone's actually diving into it. So
right.
I could talk on and on about this, but I'll throw it back to you. But I totally agree. I think it's a crazy world. I think it's great. I think we live in a world where the internet can make you famous in a second, but I think it also can give credibility to people who don't necessarily deserve it, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, and I've always lived by a simple mantra. Like I don't take advice from people that haven't been where I'm trying to go. I don't go to broke people and ask them for advice on how to manage money. Right. I don't go to someone that's been divorced 4 times and ask them, how do I manage great relationships? It just, to me, it makes logical sense. But what I do understand today, and I think this is where it's a little bit different, if I have the right, let's call it influencer or marketing brand behind me, I could have been divorced 4 times and still write a best-selling book on relationships.
Totally.
And that's kind of scary today. I mean, it's kind of scary that the popularity contest has gotten to the point where I could be completely a moron, but if I'm seen with the right people, that makes me valid. Not what I've
Mhm.
done, but by who I'm associated with.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the power of association trumps a lot of different things. Yeah, I mean, don't have a great answer because I think it's a vicious cycle. I mean, people buy into headlines, and this is like one of the big things I think, and I think there's so much responsibility for publications and media companies to do more checks and balances. And granted, I'm not the shining beacon here. Just like every publication wants content, they want page views. Like I fall into that too. I try to be much more diligent, but like when someone sends me an article and they're writing on entrepreneurship or something, and they reference themselves as a 7-figure business owner, or they reference themselves as having started multiple 6-figure businesses, I will usually without fail reach back out to them and ask them for proof of that. I could say you can anonymize it, you can say, but I need to see something that would factualize that. And usually the conversation ends there because they don't want to do it or it's too much effort on their behalf. But I mean, I think like, you look at, I think it was TechCrunch, and I think a lot of other publications are following suit, where they're really shuttering their doors for open contributors, in that it's become, I mean, we could talk about PR all you want, but like it's become a pay to play. People are paying people
Right.
to do publications, and then they're leveraging that to get more. And the next thing you know, they're on 60 Minutes talking about something. Like it's like, and that's crazy. But then you have people who are praising that type of press getting, but certainly so it can be deserved. But I think the entire ecosystem of media plays into that, where you get one feature and then people assume that you're credible now, so that the next publication doesn't necessarily fact check that, and so on and so forth. But who am I to sit here and say you're credible? I think you're credible in what you've done. I mean, I think you can quantify certain things, but you can't quantify certain other things. So I think you can go round and round on it, but certainly I think the responsibility certainly lies in the content creators who are actually proliferating the stories of these types of people.
Now, and I'm going to ask your personal opinion. Do you believe that this is just it's a time that we're in right now where the bullshit works and that will all shake out? Or do you believe that this is actually just a new form of marketing?
I think it's a time and place, just because I think it's where we are right now. I've seen, like, for example, like just the way that people consume media and the way that it feeds into credibility, like webinars, for example. Like last year, my business partner and I launched a successful live webinar. We sold some products. We did well, just under 6 figures. It was great. It was great and fine and good. We did it a little bit before a lot of the other marketers started to do it, and that totally diluted the value and people stopped listening. When we first launched it, and we, between the two of us, we have 300,000 Instagram followers. We used our Instagrams alone to promote it, and we did really well. People attended. People were really apt to listen and consumed and engaged with us, and it was great. And then every marketer and their mother started doing the same thing, and it just immediately blew the credibility for that format out the window. People started to associate webinars with gurus and kind of gray black hat type tactics, and it kind of blew the credibility out of the water. So it certainly isn't the overwhelming case. It's certainly a lot of people doing webinars doing quite well, but I think the fact that a couple bad apples can ruin a type of content. So I think I don't have a great answer for you. I think it's certainly an evolution of the way that people consume content. I think the internet as a whole has laid a foundation for people to be able to leverage it as such. But I think the way that people perceive that type of content is changing. So I think, you talk to me in a year, I think it'll be vastly different.
So for a young business person, I mean, our audience is typically from 18 to 30 for this show. So for a young business person, and I'm always a little careful of the word entrepreneur because I just don't know what that means anymore. But so let's just say for a young business person, and they want to promote their product and or service, what type of content are you seeing from what you're doing that consumers want to consume right now? And are you seeing a shift in that?
Yeah. I think again, this is like kind of intangible, but I think like the best content is honest. I think when you give actual details into what you're doing and what you're building, that always resonates. I think the best content invites conversation. The best content is approachable. These are all buzzwords, but like, the ability to connect with an audience is it depends on your ability to be relatable, right? So, I mean, there's a difference between what people consume and what people share, right? People love to share a Mark Cuban article because by association, you're endorsing Cuban and you're saying that some of his qualities are your qualities and it's great and you're getting this social effect. But the content that actually reverberates and that when people reach out to me individually via email is where I am honest, I am describing everything that's happening to me, and I'm inviting conversation. Like that type of content, while it's not as sexy, it's not as glamorous, you're not having headlines about how this 20-year-old quit his job and now lives in Tahiti and makes $10,000 a day, but it creates that actual connection. And I've driven more business like as a business person through content that way, much more than like that feature in Entrepreneur, for example. Like that feature was great. I had a pretty good headline, of course, because they want to drive traffic, and that's great. And I love the headline. Who's not going to want a headline like that? But I've driven more business for like when I do consulting and whatnot from actual articles that I've penned myself on Pursuit, or that I wrote on Medium, or that I wrote on LinkedIn, or something small, and it only got a couple thousand views versus the 20,000-30,000 views that article got. So I think it's transparency will always trump everything. That word itself is the whole concept around the company that we bought, and every way that we create content around that idea of transparency and experience driven. So, I mean, I think if you're a young entrepreneur, business person, creator, whatever it may be, and you're looking to either spread the word about your business, or you're just looking to create content and do content marketing, or you're just looking to create content because you love to write and tell stories, I think it will always come back to this age of transparency. And despite maybe the current ebb and flow of where we are now with this glamorization of kind of the airplanes and the laptop lifestyle, I think it's coming back to just being real in every sense of it. So that's, maybe I'm delusional and I'm just sitting here thinking that, but I think a lot of people agree with me. And I think if you're honest with yourself and if you think about the value you got from this article versus another article, I think if you're honest with yourself, you would know which one actually is speaking to you.
Yeah, and I can tell you, if you're crazy, that makes two of us, so we're crazy together. Because when Jeff decided that we were going to do this podcast or Facebook Live show or whatever, I didn't want it to be like a typical podcast where we just bring in people that talk about success and like I wanted to get into the dirt. Like I wanted to get into I wanted people to be vulnerable and transparent of what truly is going on, like their authentic self. And because what I have found is that the more authentic I am as a person, and I'm willing to share my skeletons in my closet, and I don't have it all figured out, that's when I'm truly allowed to impact other people. So I'll show all my warts. I mean, this show is one big wart. We haven't figured it out yet, but it's not about it looking sexy. It's about it being real. And in an era of this social media space, I think so many people, I even see it amongst my peer group of friends. I'm married. I have 3 kids. But when my acquaintances post on social media, they don't post the 3 kids acting like a loony, acting crazy in the grocery store. They post the nice family photo. And some people are apt to look at that and say, why is my family so crazy and everybody else's family is so perfect? Because we don't put our train wrecks out there.
Totally.
And I want to put the train wrecks out there because I think that's what life is about. And that's truly how we can learn from other people's journeys.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, 100% agree. I mean, I think people, there's a lot of science behind it. Like dopamine is released when you read an article that is clickbaity and that is aspirational. Like dopamine is released when you read an article about someone who quit their job and now lives in Bali and is a millionaire, right? Because it's aspirational. You love it. You love that idea. You feel like you're accomplishing something by reading that content. You feel like you're moving yourself closer to it just by reading it. But in reality, it's actually hurting you, right? But like the relatability of that is non-existent. How can you possibly relate to that? So yeah, I mean, I think there's a huge difference between what people read and what people share, obviously, to your point. So I think it'll always be that way. Not everyone wants to wear their heart on their sleeve, as they say, but I think from a content perspective, companies that root themselves in that transparency will be successful. And I think on the individual level, on a product level, I think that speaks a lot to just general marketing techniques. But like, for example, the webinar that I referenced earlier that we've since sunsetted just because we've moved on to some other efforts, but like our whole idea around it was it was a how to start blogging and be successful in blogging. And we spent, it was a 10-hour course, and we put a lot of effort into it. I flew out to Phoenix and filled it with my business partner, and it was great. But the whole idea around it, and we spent a long time up front saying, we were like, hey, listen, like we're Matt and Case, and like we're going to tell you how to be successful, become a successful blogger. But we're only going to tell you within our sphere of reference. We're only going to be able to open the hood of our car and tell you what we did and what was the effect of everything that we did. We can't conjecture on anyone else. We can't tell you it will make you successful. All we can do is tell you what we've done. So, I mean, that resonated really well. We did really well on the webinar, and it, we created a community around it, and it was great. And I think that level of transparency goes a long way. And I see a lot of people releasing products and webinars that are all encompassing and that promise the stars. And I think it's because people get so wrapped up in this idea of promising too much, when in reality, people respect you a lot more if you draw a line in the sand and say, hey, I could take you here. I don't know what's beyond there, but you need to get there first, and I can help you that because here's what I've done X, Y, Z, and I'm willing to offer you that transparently. So, whether you're a consultant, whether you're a young entrepreneur launching a product, I think people need to recognize that, and I think any marketing material, any content creation should reflect that.
Case, I love that, and I'm just gonna make a quick announcement. If anyone out there is watching has any questions, Case, would you be open to answering any questions about building a business, building a brand, building a following? All right.
Of course.
Hey, Jeff, let them know. Shoot the questions, and we'll get them as they come in. So along the same lines, Case, if you are I had a conversation today with one of my, a new member of our team, and because they are new in business, their concern was, do I want to document my journey and put it out there on social media, because aren't I just advertising that I'm brand new in the business? My advice to him is, no, that's authentic. It's real. You're not claiming to be an expert, but document the journey. And I'm a follower of Gary Vee. Document the process. That's how you win. It might be a long game. You're not playing a short game. I think if you wanted to go out there and say you're successful, it may lead to short-term sales. But if you're in the business for the long game, then do it the right way. Would you have any advice?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I've heard Gary say that, ad nauseum. So I think it's so true. I mean, I think if you're new in business, you're new in whatever aspect, and you want to become a thought leader, and you also want to create content along the way, the only sphere of reference that you have is your own experience. So you're really not qualified to do anything other than document, right? Even if you're not really qualified to sit down and to give a lecture on how to do something when you're on day 2 on the job. Really, all you're qualified to do is document. So I think it's a totally legitimate, and it's the only way for you to create content. Content should be derivative of experience. And right now your experience is limited. So all you can do is document it. Certainly, to your point, it's definitely a long haul. I think documenting comes with its inherent difficulties to scale. I think it's relatable, yes, but I think, again, people want relatable, but relatable isn't always feel good. So you need to find a balance between feel good, that dopamine releasing factor that increases that desire to share and associate, along with that relatability. I don't have the perfect equation for that. If I did, Pursuit would be a lot bigger, certainly. And I'd be, an 8-figure marketer. But I think finding that balance is key. But I think if you're going to start to document, I think I see it. I've struggled with it as well. Like getting into video content, for example, has been a priority of mine recently, but something that I struggled to do consistently previously because it's tough. Documenting something without glamorizing certain aspects of it, it kind of hurts your ego a little bit. So I'd say like the advice, if you're going to get into documenting, have a consistent strategy in mind and just be relentless with it. I think the old I think Gary Vee even said it too. It's like the whole like 1 is better than 0 idea. So even if one person is consuming it, I think that should be rewarding enough. And just be consistent with it. I mean, to my point earlier, I truthfully have been creating content every day for over 3 years, and not all of it's documenting, but it's the routine and the practice of it that has gotten me to this point. So I think, I think it's both tougher than ever and easier than ever to create content and scale to an audience, but it's definitely tough to begin. But again, it's the first step is starting. So I would definitely agree with you that documenting in this day and age is the truest and most transparent form of content creation.
But like you said, it is hard, Case. This is our 14th episode, and I would be crazy and I would be being dishonest if I didn't tell you that I watch numbers. So it's a fine line between, not getting down. Oh my gosh, we only had 100 viewers or 200 viewers or 1,000 viewers. And knowing that you're just doing the right thing. And if you just stay consistent with it long enough, then the results that you want will happen if you are authentic. But it's a long game. But that's hard. It is ego. I mean, it does hurt your ego sometimes.
It sucks.
It sucks not being a popular guy. I mean, It sucks.
Trust me, it really sucks. I mean, like, for example, on Pursuit specifically, I never really focused a lot on Facebook growth. I was very big on Instagram and my email list. I've recently put a lot of effort into Facebook, but basically what I used to do to grow Facebook is I would create dope content, long form experience-driven content, and I would post it on Facebook. No clickbait, no headlines, no slideshows, and naturally it got drowned out, right? Some people shared it with their friends, which was good. But I wasn't getting 1,000 shares or 500 likes or anything like that. It just wasn't scaling. So that hurt my feelings, and I guess it didn't hurt my feelings that much because I did it for another 2 years because I'm so like obsessed with what I do. But regardless, I think at a certain point, and I hate the word, making concessions or losing your vision, because I think you have to be so value driven. But if you look at the Pursuit Facebook page, the Daily Pursuit, you'll see that in order to really push the message, which has not changed, in order to push the content, which has not changed, I have utilized other techniques that are more relatable, that are more share friendly. Like I do a lot of quotes, and I've shifted to leveraging a lot of those quotes to drive article views. Like I'm okay with doing a little bit of casual guruship on the front end to get someone in the back door, and they realize that what I have to offer is very substantive and is great. So like I do a lot of quotes to really get people in the door, and over the last call it 3 months, I've gotten close to 60,000 additional fans on Facebook, all organic, which is great. But I think if the mindset is in the status quo is good content has a clickbait headline and is very polarizing, then that's the battleground that I'm playing in, and I have to play into that a little bit. As long as it drives to something that I'm proud of, that fits my vision, I'm okay with it. So I think adaptability is key. I think initially I wasn't totally, I think I was so myopic in my vision. I didn't always understand, you might have an idea and you want to revolutionize an industry or an environment, but you have to recognize that you're playing within the current status quo, and that in order to play in there, sometimes you have to play by the rules in order to make that shift. So I think that's an important realization to make for sure.
And when you say the rules, are you talking about like the rules of consumption? Like if I want to bring people to my site, sometimes I have to put out a headline that people want to consume in order to give them the full story, which is where I want to take them anyway.
Exactly. So I think it's unwritten rules. I think it's psychological rules, but I think also like the algorithms of the current top social platforms play into that, right? I mean, you look at Facebook, like it's machine learning, right? It's machine learning that uses engagement to drive reach and to help its system help understand what actually resonates. So like, again, people share what they want to be perceived alongside of. People click, a terrorist attack or a car accident, and that's the type of content that those platforms push up, right? They're not necessarily pushing forth the content about a young entrepreneur sharing his story, right? Because that's not as glamorous. It doesn't drive the algorithm. So you have to figure out clever ways to not trick, but to engage that algorithm to help drive users to your site. And then, if someone arrives there and they're like, this isn't what I want, then you push them away and they're not your right user. But to get them in the door, I think you have to leverage the current environment and what you understand about social media.
So, and once again, this is coming from someone that's a little bit older. What I hear you saying tells me why influencer marketing may be big, because I get, if Gary Vee puts out a post and it references me, by default, more people want to see my content than by me just writing it on its own. So if Gary Vee wears a pair of Nikes, then more people want to see Nikes and maybe attracted to that product. Is what you're saying why influencer marketing will be so important? It is
Absolutely.
now and going forward?
Absolutely. I mean, celebrity endorsements are huge, right? And you narrow that down on the influencer and micro influencer level, and you have the same effect. I mean, I've been in like large scale digital advertising for quite some time. So talking about brands that are spending 50, 100, 200 million dollars a year on digital advertising, banner ads, pre-roll, YouTube ads, things like that, very traditional forms of advertising. And people have inherent banner blindness. People don't click banners. People have ad blockers. People don't pay attention to that. People don't watch. If you watch TV, you skip the commercials. You either fast forward it, you change the channel, or you leave the room, right? The same the expectation that when an advertiser buys a banner ad on a website, that someone is going to engage with it, that's ludicrous. I mean, it's insane. Like, if someone is going to step away from their TV to avoid an ad, they're certainly not going to click an ad on a desktop or a mobile device, right? To a certain extent, there's a lot that would dispute that, and I would honestly dispute some of the things I just said, because there are some very clever technology that would actually help that. But towards the influencer side, that is the moving towards the influencer side. I mean, influencers are supposed to be the beacon of transparency and experience-driven content, right? So it goes back to what we were saying. You're putting a face onto an endorsement. You're putting a face onto an experience, onto a feeling that you just can't do in a static environment. And that's, influencer marketing means a lot of things to different people. And certainly we're in an age where measuring the ROI on influencer marketing is tangible, but it's also not tangible. There's a lot of things that you can't necessarily measure when trying to understand the larger field of influencer marketers. But we do a lot of Instagram and type executions and the integrated type content, and it tends to do really well. So I mean, just ostensibly speaking, it is a very value driven channel for marketers, and I think that's where the money's going now. I'm curious to see where it goes once that field becomes a bit more diluted. People are getting video ads now in between their Snap stories and their Instagram stories, and they're disrupting the flow of influencers. So, I mean, it's naturally going to change things when all of a sudden advertisers and marketers start pouring money into certain channels. It dilutes the value a bit, and it changes the consumer mindset. Like, will what I described earlier as my observations around webinars, will that same effect happen on Instagram for influencers or, any other format? I can't say for sure, but I mean, it's, when the government is starting to mandate, adding certain hashtags for influencers, and when,
right.
The whole Fire Festival fiasco with the influencers, giving an endorsement to something that wasn't realistic, it puts a lot of things into question. So I think, there's a lot of unknowns, but I think bare bones, meat and potatoes, obviously influencer marketing is valuable because of the experience-driven angle and the transparency angle.
So if I just walk take the dots, what you're saying is basically Google pay-per-click or Google SEO or sponsored ads worked really, really well, 8 and 10 years ago. It became more diluted. Consumers got used to, okay, I'm not looking at the top page of when I Google something because I know that those are all paid for sites. And I think we're starting to see that shift on social media as well, because I've been doing Facebook advertising for almost 3 years now. And if I just purely look at the numbers, like my CPC and registration rates are dropping tremendously. Consumers are now, okay, I know that that's an ad. It is not as relevant to me. If we walk this forward and it goes to influencer marketing, people will understand that. Won't it always come back to then just personal relationships? Like, won't everything just come back to, okay, I know you, Case, you endorsed it, I trust you.
Right.
I mean, that's where it seems like it's going to end. It'll just come down to personal referrals.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, word of mouth marketing is the penultimate as marketing, right? That's the ultimate goal, is to get your friends to refer you to things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you think of like a marketing funnel, right? Like, that's like tip of the spear at the bottom there. It's hey, Case, you should go buy this product. Hey, John, you should go buy this product. Absolutely. So yeah, I think so. I mean, you got to, you look, like, every time I hop on Facebook, for example, like, you look at the like, Facebook obviously has a ton of different ways to target people, but I follow a lot of entrepreneurs. I follow a lot of public speakers, inspirational type stuff. I mean, I think every time I hop on, there's another marketer serving me a sponsored ad for, their webinar or their product to tell you how to start a business from your home, right? It's just beaten over the head. Maybe it's a frequency issue. Maybe, these companies are hungry for money, so they're willing to pound you over the head with hundreds of ads a day. I forget what the average number of ads per user per day are just in real life. It's like a crazy, like, high, like 5-figure number. So, I mean, I think dilution in every aspect is a real beast. I mean, I think like SEO and like SEM, I think will always have a place, because that's a very lean forward medium, right? When I'm going and I'm searching for something on Google or Bing, like I have an end process in mind. I'm lean forward. I'm trying to activate something. I'm trying to accomplish something. But when I'm on Facebook, I'm lean back. I'm hanging out, right? And to be served those ads is not an effective metric. That's why webinars have always been so effective, because you're attending a webinar, you're lean forward, you're trying to learn something. That's why it's a very opportune moment to sell something. Same with podcasts, right? So like, I have a podcast as well that's done very well. We're like 2 years in, and that is also it's a lean forward consumption, and in the way it presents itself. Yeah, you could be lean back in just in your presence, but it's something where you're engaging with the speaker, right? So I think it comes down to finding mediums that lend itself to that word of mouth proliferation. I think like podcasts and social accounts that do it right will always have that edge up. I think there will always be, for large brands, the need, and there will always be the media market mix modeling to prove out the essence of buying a Super Bowl spot and, all that great stuff. And there certainly is a lot of metrics that would back that up. But I think, for young businesses, for young entrepreneurs, for people that are launching products, you really have to pick your battles, right? You don't want to play in the same sandbox with people who can spend $1 million to your $10. You have to figure out how you can make that go further. And whether that's through influencer marketing or through some really clever Facebook ads that speak to a very, very certain demographic, I think the more specific you can get, that will make you more successful. Like dynamic ads, dynamic Facebook ads, behaviorally driven ads, like dynamic remarketing ads, like that's like the technology that I invest myself in every day. That's kind of what I do as a day job. Like I see a future in that, but just blanket buy my product because you're a millennial, that has never and will never work.
So I know that there are quite a few people that have asked me that have watched the show that are thinking about launching something like this, a video podcast about what they do. In your professional opinion, because you've been doing this much longer than me, how much longer of this game do we have? So this, because right now I think like we're kind of early in the space that we're on right now. What do you think the timeline is before that becomes diluted and saturated and nobody's paying attention to that anymore? Or do you believe that this will always be a space because so few people are willing to do it?
Yes, I think that's it. I think it'll always be a space. I think a lot of people are starting podcasts. I think a lot of people are, jumping into podcasting or blogging because they want to become an entrepreneur, right? And I think, one, we need to draw the line of what that really means. Like, I don't care. Like, oftentimes I don't even call myself an entrepreneur. Like, it's not a title that matters to me. I'm a content creator. I just like to create dope stuff. Like, it's just what I do. And I also like to make money on the side of it. I guess in that sense, truly, I am an entrepreneur, but I don't care about titles, right? But I think there'll always be a timeline and opportunity to do it. I think right now it's very crowded. I mean, if you look on iTunes and you look on, any podcasting platform, where it's someone interviewing entrepreneurs. Yeah. I think it's the list is going to go on and on and on. You do it, I do it, a lot of other people do it. I think you and we do it unique. I think there's a lot of different ways to do it in a way that is not just turnkey. But I think we're in the meat of that curve, the parabola right now. I think a lot of people when they see how difficult it is to scale and monetize and sustain, that's when they drop off. So I'm in it for the long game. I always have. Like, I see articles all the time. People are like, blogging, what's the point? I may as well just start an Instagram account. I disagree. I think long form content is making a return. I like your style of podcasting and your long form. You do this for an hour, 2 hours, sometimes over 2 hours. And I love long form content. So I think tweaks like that and then just long-term vision, that's what will make you successful in this day and age. But I think you've really got to have a good head on your shoulders, or just be really stubborn. So either way. And I think you'll be better equipped to put in the work over years rather than months.
So what is it that kept you? I mean, I know for myself, I'm driven by just a much, much higher. I mean, this isn't about money. It's about a much higher purpose to just deliver value. And that's what keeps me going. It'll keep me here till midnight tonight. I love it. Like, I have fun doing it. So I love the game.
Yeah.
The outcome of the game. I love playing the game. It's not about winning or losing. I just enjoy every single inning. And now I forgot my ADHD. I forgot my train of thought. What kept you going?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I could answer that similarly. I think I've always been value driven, and I get a lot of satisfaction from knowing that what I do, generally speaking, comes from a place of offering value. But I would be lying if I was saying that's the only thing that motivates me. I like to make money. I like to live a certain lifestyle. Like, who doesn't? And I think that's always been a motivating factor. But more than that, and this is something that I talk about with Matt, my business partner, Matt Gottesman, HDF Magazine, and also the co-founder of Trep Media Group, is he and I have always been adamant about creating dope things that we can monetize. But the larger effect of that is the fact that we own distribution. We, as a publisher, as a content provider, as a content creator, as a content curator, we own the distribution for that. So that does a lot for us, in that it allows us to be extremely nimble and dynamic in the future. I own Pursuit. We run 200 to 500,000 monthly uniques, a couple million page views a month. We have our Forbes top 7 podcast, 500,000 social followers, an email list of 50K. We have large numbers, but they're not where I want them to be per se, but they're growing. Those numbers mean we have distribution. So if next Tuesday I wanted to start a t-shirt company, I wouldn't have to spend $1 on Facebook ads. I wouldn't have to spend $1 on influencer marketing. I have all that distribution. And to me, that makes me sound like a control freak, but I never want to have to rely on another publication or media to pick up my story. I want to own, the means of distribution. And to me, that's always been a big goal of mine. I mean, call it, I want to be influential, but more than that, I want to have a platform where I can share something quickly and to the masses. But more so, I'm a digital marketer. I do a lot of different products. I've done a lot of different digital products over the years. The ability to have your own distribution is hands down the greatest asset you could ever have. I mean, you hear marketers say the money's in the list. that certainly is true. But when you scale that to a super large list and you scale that to content, there really isn't anything that you can't do. I mean, you look at the likes of like Barstool and Thrillist and those guys, like they've got the model down right. They have content. I wouldn't necessarily call it good content, but they've got content and they've got a following. If they want to introduce a t-shirt on Tuesday, they have a mock on Monday, they launch it. They're 6 figures in on Wednesday. It's what they can do. And that's the effect that I've been able to create on a small scale and that I want to continue to create. So I think to answer your question of what keeps me going, it's that vision and knowing that, every one numeric one that I can add to my viewership or my subscription base gets me closer to that goal. That's what keeps me going. So, certainly it is the value as a core foundation, but it's the ability to see the future as a distribution platform and the ability that say, hey, to be honest, man, I need a break from creating content. I'm going to hand the reins off to someone else, but now I'm going to create a headphones company. I'm going to create a headphones company, and I'm going to use what I've spent the last 5 years creating. Like, to me, that's awesome. It sets me up for the future, and it still allows me to have that satisfaction from creating content. That's the other thing. I love to read and write, so having that is always a win for me.
Yeah, and what you just said, I completely agree with. And when you have eyeballs and you have attention, you can create anything you want. And like you said, you have a distribution platform. So if you have 50,000 subscribers to your emails and they're engaging and consuming that information, and you wanted to write a book, you now launch your book and you're a bestseller. I mean, it happens organically, because you're creating value. And I think that's the part where most people fail. I see I get pitched by people all the time that want to build my Instagram account, basically. I can get you 10,000.
Yeah.
But guys, they aren't consuming my information. I mean, I don't need 5,000 16-year-olds from a third world country, because they're not going to consume the information. I'm not providing any value. So for me, once again, it comes back to it's a long game. And knowing that I'm in it for the long haul is what allows me to keep doing it. I think so many people want it to happen overnight, though. They want to put out a piece of content and have 1,000 or 10,000 or 500,000 people consume it. And it happens, but it's not the norm. I mean, that's like the unicorn.
Right. But the problem is people think it is the norm because that's what you read about. You're not going to read about someone who wrote an article about, hey, I launched and it was okay. Like, no one's going to read that. But the articles that float to the top of Reddit, the articles that float to the top of Facebook, of Medium, of LinkedIn are the success stories. So people start to adapt that as the norm. And then when they launch and they don't see that, they get disappointed. And then that tails off their motivation. Right. So, again, I think that's why I think it's so important. Like on Pursuit, I love to share stories of people failing because I think it's so valuable. I mean, the whole cliche of failing is great and all, like, whatever, and it's true, I suppose. But people tend to really like to talk about that. But I think it's essential to share those different perspectives. And I think, I think knowing that it's going to be a rough beginning is super important. I think also it's just like a matter of not getting ahead of yourself. When I first started Pursuit, again, this is in 2011. No, that wasn't 2011. When I first started like getting into digital marketing, that was in 2011, and like 2013 was Pursuit. But 2011, I was like, I want to create a media company. And then when I finally got the idea of Pursuit, I'm like, all right, here's like the executive board. And then like I threw into it, and like a CEO, and then like I was like chief development officer and like CTO, and like why are you like putting the cart before the horse? Like there's no need for that. It is detrimental, and it's going to set yourself up for a lot of disappointment. So I think you got to think small. Like it's like aim small, miss small, right? Like initially, like you've got to invest yourself in every aspect of what you're doing and just keep it close to yourself. Like, you don't need to tell other people what you're doing. Like there's the whole like psychological phenomenon about like people like, oh, like tell your friends what your goals are so they keep you accountable. Where on the flip side, there's like the whole psychology, like when you tell a friend your goal, there's that like little dopamine release that makes you think that you're moving closer towards it because you're outwardly expressing it. So it's actually a little bit detrimental to yourself, because when internally, when you're telling someone and when you're expressing your hard work that you're putting in, or like your desire to do something, you're tricking yourself into thinking that you're actually working towards it when you're just talking about it, right? So like, I think I keep my mouth shut. I try to be humble. I try to just sit down and do work. And I think that and it helps you not get so far ahead of yourself. And like all these people calling themselves CEO, like, I'm sorry, dude and sister, but like starting a podcast and calling yourself a CEO is, first of all, it's not even accurate. Like, you're the chief executive officer. What is your board? Show me your articles of incorporation. It doesn't make any sense. But second of all, it's like there's all this desire to become, I'm CEO, bitch, right? Like from social network. And I think that again is just a net effect of the way that people glamorize entrepreneurship, which is anything but. So I think you just gotta, I think like before you even consider yourself a entrepreneur, just consider yourself a content creator. Like Matt and I on our podcast, we have people on all the time, and we tend not to talk about business. Like we had the CEO of JetBlue on, we had a lot of really, really successful people, and we never talk about their business. We talk about what are you creating? Like, I think when you look at business in the lens of creation and as a creator, whether that's artistic or whether that's anything else, I think that's what helps you set yourself up for success. And I think if a young entrepreneur starts from that lens, you're going to be able to sustain yourself over time, because you call yourself CEO of something and then 6 months later you have no scale. It's like, it's embarrassing and you're going to quit. Like, that's the reality of it. So I think, avoid all that bullshit. Stop reading the headlines and just create something. Keep it close to yourself and then start telling people as you see fit. But like, you've got to do it. You've got to do it value driven inherently. And you got to have a lot of patience for sure.
And you said something I think is so very true. And just from the podcast standpoint and what you do, the glamorization of entrepreneurship or owning a business, like, really? Like if people only saw what I've gone through the last, 20 years, like, it's not glamorous. Trust me, it is. There are a lot of bad times sometimes in business. And when you take on the role of building businesses, not only are you taking yourself on, but you're now taking on the lives of other people. And that leads to a lot of challenges because other people's lives are at stake. So it can be, Gary had that thing, it's lonely at the top. Like, there can be a very, very lonely place and scary place when you know that other people's lives are dependent upon you.
Totally. Yeah.
It's not glamorous though.
Not at all. I mean, and I think my story is a little bit interesting because, I do have this company. I have been successful in the different, digital products that I've launched, and I do a lot of consulting, but I still have my 9 to 5. I think we talked about this last time. Mm-hmm. I run the sales for the Midwest for a large technology company. And, so, I mean, I talk a lot about side hustles, when I do various, speaking events and content that I write and consulting, because I think that's so important. Because if you're not ready to be selfless, like, you're really not ready to make that jump. And I always try to be as honest as possible. Clearly, I'm not ready to be a full-time entrepreneur because I haven't quit my day job, and I don't really honestly plan on quitting it anytime too soon, because I'm getting a lot of value out of it. And I'm happy to talk about that. But I think you really have to examine yourself personally to say, I am ready to one, sacrifice a lot, but two, be selfless, knowing that other people are counting on you for sure. So like, that's something that I don't have a whole lot of experience with that I think is a very interesting aspect of entrepreneurship. But I think, there's a lot of things that you could do as stepping stones on your way there. I think a lot of people, one day have this idea and the next day they're planning on quitting their job, when I think there's a much smarter way to do things.
So I think, hey, I'm gonna touch on this. When you have people that work and you're building an organization and scaling an organization, if you truly care about your people, what you do as a leader is you absorb all of their pain. Like, it's at least I do. So if they're going through something in their lives and it's hurting them personally, I feel that pain myself because I actually care about my people. And that's something that I think so few people understand when it comes to, I want to run a business. Like, be very careful of, do you really want that level of responsibility? And can you handle the pain of 10, 20, 50, or 100 other people? Because
Totally.
their lives become your life.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think at a certain level, you have to also, I mean, obviously business is people driven, right? So you're only gonna be as good as your weakest link, obviously. And I think if you understand that, your success hinges on the success of the people that report to you or that work for you or that are part of your organization, then there's you will make that connection inherently and organically. You won't have to force yourself to empathize or sympathize or any aspect of that. So I mean, I think that's so true. I've learned that in my corporate job, certainly, because I have a somewhat large team that reports to me, and I've learned that really well. But as an entrepreneur, I think it ratchets it up a whole nother level because there's no safety net. Absolutely. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Why you were getting ready to go down, and I cut you off on that little tangent. You were getting ready to say something about, you could go down a tangent about why you haven't left your job. I think that's where you're getting ready to go.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I think so many people want to take that leap, and you find a lot of value where you are, or else you wouldn't stay. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I am a little bit unique in that I have mirrored my day job with my entrepreneurial efforts. They're very closely aligned. It's the same industry. It's like same skill set. It's crazily aligned. And I think that is very different from what a lot of people, I work at a bank. I'm a bank teller, but I'm passionate for producing music. Like, those are very antagonistic ideas. And I can see how that would cause you to struggle a lot, and that would lead you to be much more eager to quit your job. So, I mean, on my end, I do digital advertising technology sales for a company in the Midwest. I spend a lot of time traveling, but everything I do is digital marketing related. It's social media related, and it's sales oriented and business development oriented. I mean, those four aspects are exactly what I do for Trep Media and for Pursuit, right? So it's business development related, obviously, because I own the company. It's sales related, obviously, because I need to bring in new clients. And then it's digital marketing and social media, right? So everything that I learned during the day is applicable at night, and vice versa. I've been fortunate to be promoted quite quickly and do quite well at my company. And I think that's largely in part to what I do with Pursuit. So it's feeding both ways. It's created a nice foundational cushion for myself financially, so I'm able to live the lifestyle that I want, and at the same time work on what I'm very passionate about in the form of Pursuit and Trep. So I think, it's tough to give advice when I say, like, you should find a 9-to-5 that closely mirrors your passion project or whatever it is that you want to jump and do full time. But it doesn't always come like that, right? You jump into a job with Deloitte, but you discover that you're really passionate about something that's a completely opposite end of the spectrum. You can't rejigger that so easily. So I mean, I think more fundamentally, I think people, I think it's a little bit crazy to rely on only one source of income. I mean, I've got like 6 or 7 at this point from different things. I think that as a mentality is very important. People who just ignore everything and jump right into their one effort, I think is a little nearsighted. I think a lot of people would disagree with me. I think a lot of people would say, you're not an entrepreneur until you put your blinders on and you jump headfirst and learn how to fly on the way down into your endeavor. I think a lot of people are of that school of thought, but I've lived the opposite. And not only has it increased my skill set and made me much more marketable, but it's increased my earnings tenfold and revenue streams tenfold. I mean, on a daily basis, I'm making money on my day job. I'm making commission on my day job. I'm making programmatic passive income on my blog. I'm selling digital products. I'm doing consulting for, $200, $300, $400 an hour. And I'm doing many, I'm taking that money and I'm doing investments. I'm investing in Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? So all these different things that I'm able to do as a result of that side hustle thinking. I think that's truly the route, but I think a lot of people will probably disagree with me. So it is what it is. But for me, the ability to leverage those skill sets parallel, I think is invaluable. I think it's the perfect scenario for me. But I think my advice for someone else who maybe is in their corporate 9 to 5, who wants to jump full time into whatever passion project they have, my advice would just be patient. Try to find some aspect of your 9 to 5 that can enhance your ability in your passion project. Lean on that for as long as you can, and then make that jump. Just like I spent a lot of money on Pursuit and Trep Media for different things. Like if I didn't have my corporate job to funnel that, I would be massively in debt. So I think the realization that comes from that is the fact that it's very expensive. So whether you're raising capital, whether you're getting an angel injection, or whether you're taking out a loan from your mother or the bank, there's a lot of different ways to approach that. But I think the smartest route is to stick it out as long as you can, to set yourself up for success in the long term. I've seen a lot of people in my industry, which is digital advertising on the corporate side, jump to start their own things. And I respect it a lot. But a year later, I see them all come back because they jumped too soon. Maybe they're a little bit overeager and overzealous and didn't test the market first. Like I've been testing the market for 3 years. I know it's there. It's slowly scaling. Eventually it'll scale enough where eventually I will leave and do my own thing. But I'm not going to do that anytime soon because the value pass off is so great for me.
So what I heard you just say is sometimes you may be doing something that may be a vehicle to do something that's bigger or you're more passionate about, but don't lose sight of it. It may be a stepping stone to get to someplace different, but without that, you could be in a much worse position. Like without your day job, if it wasn't for your job, you wouldn't have had that. You wouldn't have had the financial resources possibly to do what you really wanted to do.
Exactly. And like, I mean, again, all I can reference is my experience. I can't give overarching advice, but like so I worked at an ad agency for 2 years, and then I jumped to another one, worked there for a year. And then I jumped at like an entry level role at this technology company. That was 4 years ago at that role. And now I'm a director of sales at this company, which is a pretty senior sales role there. But I came up with the idea for Trep and Pursuit in that first year of that second agency job. So if I had worked that and then maybe went to the technology company and quit my first year and jumped in and it didn't work out and I tried to go back, I certainly wouldn't be at the level I am now because obviously, I mean, companies reward tenure, sure, whatever, but companies reward experience. And the experience that I garnered so quickly at this company allowed me to do well and allowed me to get promoted. So, I mean, again, it's the experience that allowed me to be successful. And I think if I had jumped too soon, I never would have gotten that experience. And I mean, everything that my Pursuit would suck, Trep would suck. We would not be doing well if I didn't have the skill set that I am developing during the day. Sales, BD, just industry knowledge. Like, I think that's so important. And you're not going to get that if you jump too soon. And I'm the world's most impatient man. So when I sat down and I was like, oh, Pursuit's going to be huge, I want to quit my job. Like that idea flashed in my head, but immediately I was like, I need to pump the brakes a little bit. So I think, patience is so key. I can't stress that enough, but I mean, I get the frustration if you're working on something doesn't jam with what you're doing. But I think you need to find a different lens to look through. Find another way to picture that vehicle to help enable that passion project. And I think if you sit down and you're strategic and you could find that. Maybe you work at JP Morgan doing some aspect of something in the financial realm. Mm-hmm. Try to find another role within that company so you can continue earning and learning and then transition that. I think sometimes we get so myopic in that the only way to commit to your passion project is to jump completely. And in the reality, you can pivot a lot of different ways. At least in my experience, that is true. So just, I think being patient,
but at the same, and once again, I feel like we're like quoting Gary Vee here, but being patient, but with an extreme sense of urgency. Like do something, but then be very, very patient once you make the decision. But you got to do something. You can't sit around and just think your way through it.
Amen. Yeah, everyone says it, but obviously just get started. It doesn't have to be great. Just start doing something. Like Pursuit was horrible when I first started it. I think it's still got a long ways to go, but at least I'm doing it and I'm making money off it and it's growing. I'm an entrepreneur in Forbes. Like, I think that's something to be said. And the other thing, if we are referencing Gary, I mean, he always says, like, be realistic. Like, be realistic. Like, you can't expect that you're going to quit and become a millionaire, or you can't expect that you're going to be able to produce positive net revenue for yourself in your first venture. Like, be realistic. If you have student debt, you have to pay it off. Like, jumping is stupid. Like, that's a stupid thing to do. I'm sorry. Like, even if you are passionate about it, and even if, you know, you are very ardent in the value you want to offer, it's stupid. Like, it's just not a smart thing to do. So, like, be realistic in the responsibilities that you have to yourself, or maybe to others, or something like that. But I think, have a sense of urgency, be patient, yeah. And then, you know, be realistic. I think if you have those qualities about you, you'll shift to where you need to be, and you'll get there faster than you think.
So where do you see, because you've talked a lot about the long game, like, what is the long game for Pursuit or for Trep Media? Like, where do you see that evolving?
Yeah. So, I mean, right now, Trep Media encompasses Pursuit and encompasses my partner Matt's publication, Hustle and Deal Flow. It encompasses our podcast, The Hustle Sold Separately. It encompasses all our social. It encompasses all of our digital marketing. It encompasses our branding consultancy that we run called Alchemy. So it encompasses a lot. So the goal is to obviously continue to introduce other products into that we can leverage via our distribution. So it's an extremely scalable venture, which is why we structured it the way we did. I think from the publication standpoint, Pursuit, the goal is to make it much, much larger. I mean, we're zeroing in on 1 million monthly uniques, which would be a kind of a tentpole benchmark for me. I mean, I am a businessman, so, you know, an exit is always on the horizon, particularly with the high yield, low resource hold that we've been able to build with the company. Like, the multiples for selling profitable, you know, publications is quite high. So that's, of course, appealing to me. But I mean, you know, the 5-year game plan is to just continue to build influence so that we could build multiple products on top of it. Pursuit has a little over 500 contributors since I started, which is a good number. You know, I want to 10x that. You know, I want 5,000. I want 50,000. You know, I want to create more content. Right now, I'm only bandwidth able to produce one piece of content a day, but I want to be able to massively increase that. I want, you know, Pursuit to be a central platform for experience-driven content. If you, as an individual, have lived through something that you think would be valuable for other people, I want you to think of Pursuit, right? So, and I think 500 contributors testifies to people's affinity towards that idea, but there's always room for growth. So I want to continue building those numbers so that we can do that and also build influence in other areas. So, you know, if next week I all of a sudden become passionate about something, you know, about motorcycles, then I want to be able to leverage it because it is mine. I own it. And I think to me, that is very appealing to be able to use it creatively towards whatever means I'd want. To me, that is very rewarding. So yeah, I think the goal is just expansion upwards.
What do you look for? So if anyone was watching this and hey, I have an interesting piece, I'd like to submit that. How would they submit that to Pursuit to possibly get featured?
Yeah. So it's super easy. I mean, we have an open contributor platform. Anyone can contribute. If you go to pursuit.com/contribute, you can see our guidelines in there. We don't have a web-based contributor system just yet. So everything is just done via email. So you can follow the guidelines. Are very clear. You can just email to editor@pursuit.com, and then someone will reach back out to you to get it edited up and published. Usually it's a pretty quick turnaround, usually 1 to 2 weeks. We usually don't really like to sit on content. If we don't like it, we'll probably just tell you and we'll move on. But usually, yeah, we like to turn it around quick. Yeah, I mean, I used to spend a lot of time. I get people reaching out, contributing content, and it just wasn't that good. Like, not necessarily through their fault, but, you know, people were beat over the head with the status quo of content. It's supposed to be a list of things, right? No transparency. So people would write that and I would try to help them rewrite it. And I don't really have the time to do that anymore. But I do have an editor and I do have some VAs that I work with that help with that. So even if you're not the best writer in the world, but you have a cool story, we can help you curate that because we want dope content.
because I'm sure you've seen hundreds of thousands, if not a million pieces of content. What, in your opinion, makes good content from what you've seen that the marketplace desires?
Yeah.
I know we have transparency, authenticity.
Right.
Is there anything else?
Yeah. I think when it comes down to like the semantics of writing, headlines, paragraphs, please, paragraphs. And then like word count, like 1,200 words generally is the best. Generally breaking things up into consumable blocks. Like the best content that I see is a paragraph or two of someone telling a story, and then a headline of here's what the rest of the article is going to tell you, and then usually a numerical listing of those conclusions. Like, because of my experience, I learned 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Like that generally tends to do best because people are conditioned to want to know where the start and end of an article is. If someone starts reading something that has no numerical flow to it, people tend to drop off. And I've seen that in my metrics. If it's just an article that has a bunch of takeaways, but they're not necessarily numbered, people drop off. But if it's 1 through 10 and you're on 6, they'll continue reading because I've got 4 more. Right? So psychologically, I think that really helps. And it's just more organized. And again, it is the expectation nowadays, it seems, of numbered lists. And I'm not against lists. People seem to hate on the listicle fad. I don't necessarily hate on it. I think if you can fit it in with experience-driven content, you're good. So yeah, I think concise, 1,200 words usually does the trick.
And what types of content, Case? I mean, anything from travel and leisure to fashion to entrepreneurship? Like, what exactly are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, for us, the answer is yes. Anything that is based on experience. I mean, we do the platform itself. If you really ask me and wanted me to categorize it, it is a self-improvement publication.
Okay.
It's everything that we write. I like to be able to enhance a certain aspect of your life. So from that point of view, who am I to say that this wouldn't help you? Because maybe I don't know a lot about fashion. So who am I to say this wouldn't help you in another element of life? So to that point, it could be on any topic as long as you're deriving it from something that happened to you, from something you heard, just something that is derivative of your own sensation. I am happy with it. But we never do we never talk about products or anything like that. I tend to stay away from people features. Like I could smell it a million miles away when a PR firm reaches out to me under their personal email address talking about how they have this friend, John, who's done a million great things and they'd love to tell his story. I usually shoot those down real quick. I was like, that's cool. Why don't you have John write the article then? And they usually stops the conversation because they're looking for features, right? So nothing wrong with features. I love getting features on myself and other publications. I just don't like it on mine because I think it's a bit self-serving. And to me, it's it glamorizes because a feature is going to be largely positive, right? Whereas if that person maybe wrote it from their POV, it would be a little less positive, but a little more value driven. So, so just along those lines, I think that makes killer content.
Awesome. How do you find time? Do you do anything to have fun? I mean, I'm just curious because between working a job that I'm sure is pretty demanding and your side hustle, which is a pretty big side hustle. I mean, we're not talking about, you part-time at Starbucks here. How do you have any fun? I mean,
you're a loser. Yeah, I do. I mean, to be clear, like I really do. I should have added earlier when you're talking about what keeps going is I love doing it. Like on a Saturday, I love creating posts to share on Facebook. I don't know why. I just like it. I get a lot of satisfaction out of it. So to me, it's not really work for sure. And like, the majority of my friends in Chicago, for example, or LA or wherever I go, they're doing the same thing. So when we hang out, we're talking this kind of stuff. We're talking content creation. When I fly out to Phoenix and meet up with my business partner, Matt, like we're geeking out on that kind of stuff. And it's awesome. We'll go out at night, we'll grab beers, we'll go out to a bar and we're still talking about it. So it's never a burden for me. But I mean, I'm fairly normal 20 something. I tend to, on the weekends, I tend to put it to sleep largely. Sundays, I work pretty hard on it, but I do all the normal things that you think. I took a couple of great vacations. I was in Europe, I was in China, I was in Miami the other weekend. Like, love to travel, love to work out, love to do all that kind of stuff. But I think I think people run into issues with that question when what they're working on is at odds with who they hang out with.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if you're hanging out with people who it just makes no sense with, you're going to feel ostracized and you're going to start to feel that stress. But if it's, if it's the same squad, it just makes sense. And you guys are all naturally vibing off of it. Like, I spent a lot of time at Soho House here and in LA and Miami and whatever. And like I just go there and I'll jam out with other content creators and we'll just work in a cool environment. And like, to me, that's awesome. And that's a great Saturday.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because most of my businesses, the average age of anybody that works with me is probably 25 right now. Yeah. So if you catch me on the weekends, and I'm 45, but if you catch me on the weekends, I'm hanging out with 25-year-olds. So my kids jokingly say, Dad, why don't you hang out with people your own age? I preferably find them sometimes to be boring. But it just so happens that my businesses involve people of those demographics, and that's where I socialize with. And the other thing is, I may be here till midnight tonight, but I will have as much energy when I leave here as when I first walked in this morning because I love what I do. And people ask me what I do and this is where I was actually going. People ask me what I do for fun, and I say I work and no one really understands what that means. I don't play golf because it's not, or, other things other people like to do. This is my passion. Like, I love this. I do this on my free time. And I think that's what, like you said, if you aren't in alignment with what you're doing for a living or with the network that you surround yourself with, then I can see how you feel like you're stressed out. Like, I don't have a life, and you're seeking something else. You're seeking like another life because you don't live it every day.
Totally. And I think, I think that's spot on. I think you and I are probably unique in that respect. I think a lot of people would kill to have that kind of sense and enthusiasm, be that consistent. And I mean, I've been working a 9 to 5 for the last 7 years. I think it's become very clear the way that people look at their week. It's Monday through Friday, it's Saturday and Sunday, and then it's Monday through Friday, and then it's all over again. And there's that delineation of a sense of freedom, right? And I think freedom means a lot of different things to different people, but freedom for me just means the ability to create. And anytime I'm creating, that's when I'm happiest. So like I could be creating on a Tuesday and I'm happy. I could be creating on a Sunday. It doesn't really matter to me. So I think, to your point, if you can combine that with a way to support yourself financially and you can surround yourself with like-minded people who are not boring of the same mindset, then you're golden. But it certainly takes time to figure that out. I mean, it took me a long time.
Yeah, there are a lot of things I've had to do that I actually didn't enjoy. And I mean, I still do things that I don't enjoy. But the older I get and the more zoned in I get, the more I enjoy the majority of my days. And that's where I'm shooting for. I'm shooting for the day where I'm only doing things that I absolutely enjoy with people I absolutely want to be with. And to me, that's a pretty cool place.
Yeah, that's the ideal place.
All right. I have, because I want to be cognizant of your time because I know that you'll probably get off of this and probably go create some content, to be honest.
Oh, for sure. I'm itching to do it.
So one last question and we wrap up every episode with this. I believe that we're all on a journey and that journey ends in some word that we call fulfillment. That's what we're really searching for, fulfillment. And what does that word mean to you?
Good question. I think that means kind of what I just described. Honestly, it's freedom to create. I think it's the ability to create one thing today and another thing the next day, and to have that support me financially. You should certainly take that out of the question. Take the ability to live that lifestyle. Fulfillment to me is the ability to be creatively free. In whatever sense that is. So it's, creatively free to create content of this sort one day or to move to LA the next. I think to me that not having a large hindrance overhead, that is fulfillment. I think also along the lines of creative freedom as a source of fulfillment. It's the ability to do so while maintaining that value that you started off with. I think my biggest fear is that I could look back in 5 years and Pursuit could have become a monster of clickbait, right? Like that would be a big fear to me. Yeah, it would have enabled me to be creatively free, but it's not at all in line with what I started. It's not at all in line with the values that I've so ardently stuck to over the last 3 years. So I think, staying value driven, but being creatively free, to me, that is the definition of fulfillment.
I love that, Case. How do people find you? There's probably a lot of different ways, but what's the best way to learn more about Pursuit or Trep Media, or to get in touch with you personally?
Yeah, for sure. You can always email me personally, case@pursuit.com, CASE@PRSUIT.com. Or just check out pursuit.com. All the links are there, pretty clear on the about page or contribute page. If you are a business and you require some consulting or media or advertising or anything like that, you can check out trepmediagroup.com. We've got a lot of great stuff on there. Again, I've got my business partner, Matt, who's great. I also have 2 other business partners, Adam and Matthew Torin, who are pretty big deals in the digital space. They founded Young Entrepreneur Magazine. A lot of different ways, but all our social handles, obviously, you can check those out. But pursuit.com, PRSUIT is the way to go. You should subscribe to the email list, of course.
And we will put all of that in the comment thread on this Facebook post. And other than that, I really appreciate you just sharing your I love the fact that you just said, I'm going to share my experience. I think that is just so valuable. And I really, really appreciate that, because that's kind of the backbone of this show, is just keeping it real and authentic. And for that, dude, thanks so much.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I really do. I think this is awesome. I think, to your point, I think what you just said really describes it well. I think a lot of podcasts you'll get on, it's rapid fire. Tell us about this. Tell us about a time you scaled a business. Tell us about a time you did this, X, Y, Z. And I don't think that's that value. And I think the conversation we had is spot on. So I appreciate you doing it in that format. And I think that's really in line with my values and my partner's values. So I'm excited to see where the show goes. And obviously I'll share this all obviously with our email list and our Facebook page and everything from there.
All right. Thanks so much, Case. And if I'm in Chicago, I know where I'm staying. I'm looking you up, bud.
Yeah, for sure. Looking forward to it.
All right, bud. Have a great evening. Go out and crush it, and we'll chat soon.
Cool, man. All right, later.
Thank you so much, Case.
Bye, guys.
All right.